As for what is next for Elijah Rushing, let's bring in Steve Wiltfong, our Director of Recruiting for the Wiltfong Whiparound. Steve, you were all over this Elijah Rushing story, and now you and Blair have crystal balls in for Oregon to land the 5-star pass rusher. I want to hear from both of you on this, but first, Steve, what can you tell us about this ongoing situation?
Yeah, Blair and I have been working this story together, and Oregon has never gone away on Elijah Rushing. When he committed to Arizona, I don't think anyone in Eugene thought that this one was dead because of a number of reasons. Great relationship with the staff, a staff that has championship pedigree. When you're talking about head coach Dan Lanning, defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy, those guys have been part of some of the best defenses and best football teams in college football, and that's attractive to Elijah Rushing and his family. Elijah's always felt at home in Eugene during several visits, and when he committed to Arizona, that one was very close down the stretch, and Oregon gave him a lot to think about there, and then obviously continue to do so. They're having a great start to the season this fall, going into the big game against Washington this week. And what Oregon potentially provides Elijah is an opportunity to practice against great players, moving to a conference where you're going to get a chance to play against great players and to be coached by great coaches. I think those are some things that have Oregon trending right now, coming off his decommitment from Arizona.
A strong comfort level as well, Steve. He's been to Eugene a number of times. His brother Cruz, who's actually on the football team at Arizona, was a former preferred walk-on for the Ducks. So that family has a long-standing relationship with the staff in Eugene. Tosh Lupoy, the defensive coordinator, was on the sideline on Friday night at South Point Catholic to check out Elijah Rushing as South Point improved to 6-0. And then the relationship with not only Dan Lanning, who's a defensive-minded head coach, as well as Tony Tuioti are really giving, I think, Oregon a notch up right now early on in the battle as things open up again. But I'm expecting other schools to be involved as well. The Washingtons, right? The Tennessees, UCLAs, schools like that maybe missed out on Elijah Rushing the first time around. They have some new life in this recruiting battle. They can go back in there and try to feel things out and figure out, okay, how much room do we have to make up? But right now, I do like the Ducks.
Yeah, Steve, along those lines, you go back to the recruitment before he committed to Arizona, and you've got finalists. Blair mentioned, Notre Dame, Oregon, Tennessee, UCLA. What are you hearing in terms of other schools outside of the Ducks?
Well, all my intel is heavy towards Oregon right now for Elijah Rushing. I think when it was leading up behind the scenes of knowing that he could potentially reopen his process, it was Oregon being one of the big reasons why, and what the Ducks have been able to do and how they've been able to continue recruiting Elijah. That's a very attractive option. And I think it's up to those other programs now to show that they could potentially have a better situation than the one that Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy, Coach Tuioti and Oregon have right now. Because, again, he loves Oregon. He loves being up there on the campus. The family trusts the potential development that he would have with their track records at other schools and what they're currently doing at Oregon. So the bar is high for the Ducks for Elijah Rushing right now.
All right, speaking of the Ducks, they are now a top 10 team in the AP poll, but just outside in the recruiting rankings. Rushing would certainly help that. But who are some other prospects, Steve, that the Ducks are in prime position for right now?
Well, Oregon's going to be one of the more fun teams to follow on the trail as this 2024 cycle comes to the finish line here. They're in on another 5-star defensive lineman, Aiden Breland, who's going to announce his college decision on Saturday, perhaps on the 24/7 Sports Network. Working on that behind the scenes right now. But I like, the buzz, as we talked about last Thursday's show, still here on Monday. I like the way it's pointing towards Oregon right now, but Georgia and Miami certainly not going to go away for Aiden Breland. And there have been times where I've liked those other two schools for him in a recruitment that's had some ebbs and flows, but Oregon seems to be hot with Aiden Breland. Jericho Johnson is one of the best defensive line recruits in the country, certainly one of the best out west. I think Oregon has set the bar with him after having him on campus for the win over Colorado. They still have the they still have the official visit down the road in play for Jericho. Now, USC is the other program I'm watching. It's his dream school. The family has always loved the Trojans. But I think they got to make up ground on Oregon, as does Washington and Utah. But we like Oregon for top 247 running back Jason Brown. Brandon Huffman and I have 24/7 Sports crystal balls in favor of the Ducks for Jason Brown. And then you have tight end Roger Saliapaga who I also like Oregon from the state of Utah, as they try and hold off some SEC programs for him. So Oregon with a chance to really close with a bang here, as the early signing period's coming fast. Won't be long till we are doing a wall-to-wall coverage on the early signing period. And there's a chance we're talking a lot about Oregon with who they have still out there right now.
Yeah, we can go back to the visions from last year, right, with Dan Lanning and his cigar, just, enjoying the day, the big day that the Oregon had. Steve, Oklahoma had a big day on Saturday. It really drew the attention of the nation by beating Texas in that Red River rivalry out at the Cotton Bowl, and they did so by playing well in the trenches. That's an area that they're emphasizing on the recruiting trail. What can you tell us about their chase to solidify the offensive line in the future?
Yeah, well, Bill Bedenbaugh is, if he's not the best offensive line coach in college football, there's only like one or two peers that he has. Sharon Moore at Michigan comes to mind, but again, there's not many. Bill Bedenbaugh is one of the best, expecting to have 3 more draft picks on the offensive line following the season, and then another potential free agent. So four pros potentially up front for Oklahoma right now, as they were able to beat Texas in the latest chapter of Red River rivalry, and they're in on a couple big-time offensive line recruits moving forward. Daniel Nkinkumi from the NFL Academy in England is going to announce his college decision this week. And Oklahoma, the heavy favorite coming in. He took his official visit the opening week of the season for the win over Arkansas State. He said the fan base is amazing, the history of developing offensive linemen, and the culture. Bill Bedenbaugh's got a lot of guys in the NFL on the offensive line. I think Oklahoma is clearly the one to beat there. Grant Bricks, top 247 offensive lineman, is one of their top remaining targets regardless of position. And Oklahoma, led by Coach Bedenbaugh, has been pushing extremely hard here. I think that distance could be tough for them. Nebraska's their competition. There's a lot of people that think Nebraska may have the edge, and it's because of distance. Now, certainly Coach Rule and company have a lot of promising things going on in Lincoln that Bricks and his family like. But I think if all things were even and these two programs were the same distance from his house, I would put Oklahoma in the driver's seat. And he is still thinking strongly about going to Oklahoma. So that was one that I thought was going to wrap up before the season, but it's been so tough for him to make the call. It's still ongoing, and Oklahoma's pushing extremely hard there.
The Sooners are still partying right now, still very excited about that win, so let's keep talking about them. You logged a pair of crystal balls for Venables and his staff to land 3-star offensive lineman Eddie Pierre-Louis and 3-star Michael Boganowski. So what has you leaning Oklahoma with these two?
Well, Oklahoma, another program, they had a top 5 recruiting class last year, pushing for another top 10 haul this year in year 2 of the Venables era. Michael Boganowski, he just announced today that he's going to announce his college decision a week from Thursday. I think that might be on the 24/7 Sports recruiting show. So again, hit those likes and subscribe so you don't miss out on the big commitments going on out there. But talked to Boganowski's dad this week, and he talked about Oklahoma. It's a spot where they're going to make sure your child is well taken care of. They're going to continue to push him, make a better man, better football player. And then talking to the younger Boganowski, he's talked about the opportunity to play in Coach Venables' defense, them moving to the SEC, the Soul Mission program that they have. Those are all things that I think have put Oklahoma in the driver's seat as they try and beat Kansas and Kansas State, among others. And then Eddie Pierre-Louis, we talked about Bricks, we talked about Nkinkumi. Oklahoma has had Eddie Pierre-Louis as high on the board as anybody this cycle out of Tampa, Florida there. This is a guy that has ambitions of playing football at the highest level, and Coach Bill Bedenbaugh's track record, I think, is what has Oklahoma in the best position. Now, Oregon's been trying hard to get Eddie to campus, but until they're able to do that, I really like Oklahoma. UCF's certainly going to make another pitch, but the buzz is the vibes, all Oklahoma right now for him as well.
Another team that had a big weekend on the field this past weekend was Louisville. Steve, a double-digit upset over Notre Dame at home, and you had a chance to catch up with a number of players that made it down to Flyville. What was the reaction to what they saw on Saturday night?
Second half was a bloodbath. Louisville dominated a top 10 Irish team. Couldn't have picked a better weekend to do it. The stars were out. It was a star-studded recruiting section that got to see a phenomenal atmosphere, a place that was filled with a ton of energy. And then they stormed the field and talked to some coaches, some personnel people. They said they looked around. There was like 30, 40 recruits on the field, just soaking in that pandemonium there. Louisville's 6-0. You talk to some of the recruits, everything that's been said about Coach Brom and the coaching staff has been laid out there tonight right in front of their eyes. Under Coach Brom, we know our potential, and we know we can go as far as possible. This is a program that's got championship aspirations. There's no pro football team in Louisville. The town is invested. The donors are invested. You saw the fan base. This is a team that wants to go to the next level. They think Coach Brom's the one to be able to do that, and there were a lot of blue chippers there, led by quarterback Husan Longstreet out of California there that loved it and said that Louisville's one of his front runners among his 30 offers. So this may also help Louisville get back in it with some recruits that maybe they lost out on earlier in the 2024 cycle. I know that Coach Brom and company are making some phone calls saying, are you sure? You seeing what's happening here? They're going to Pitt, trying to be 7-0 this weekend. But Louisville, man, they are a team to watch in the ACC. Big win over a Notre Dame team that had been playing well.
We always talk about what these first-year staffs need to do to help on the trail. And we always say, just show improvement, show something on the field. I think 6-0 is a pretty good start to the Brom era. And we're only talking about winners on this show, so let's talk Florida State. When it comes to Mike Norvell's continued pursuit of 4-star defensive lineman L.J. McCray and 3-star linebacker and Georgia Tech commit Jordan Boyd, what's the latest here?
Yeah, and maybe soon to be 5-star defensive lineman L.J. McCray. Be locked in for Andrew Ivins and the recruiting team's updated rankings on 24/7 Sports this week. He's a stock-up guy after Ivins has seen him. Easy to see why Florida State loves him so much. He's having a phenomenal senior year. And he was at Florida State's opening win over LSU, back this weekend for the win over Virginia Tech. He told me that he liked it, just another chance to get the tally. His favorite things about Florida State are the staff and the culture. Florida State trying to make a move on Georgia. Florida's another program that's always been near the top of his list, with Miami and Florida State being two, trying to rally alongside Auburn. Not sure quite yet if those other three programs have been able to catch the perceived front runners, in my opinion, of Georgia and Florida, but certainly LJ's liked what he's seen from Florida State this year. Loves Coach Odell Haggins, loves the culture, and loves what Coach Norvell's doing there. And then Jordan Boyd is committed to Georgia Tech right now. I think Florida State's going to get him back not once, but two more times. He's going to be back for the Miami game. Going to take an official visit before the Shrine Bowl in the Battle of the Carolinas. He was there with his dad, there with a couple high school coaches. Certainly a lot of intrigue with Florida State right now with Jordan Boyd, and we'll see if Florida State ratchets it up for him as the season continues, but they're certainly in the middle of that one as well.
Steve, we lied to you. I think we also have to talk about a loser in Missouri. Even though they lost, they continue to impress some big-time targets. 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, as well as Ohio State commit Jeremiah McClellan. What did those two have to say about their time on campus?
Well, holistically, Mizzou's winning, right? They got one of the best offenses in the country. Luther Burden is the nation's leading receiver out of St. Louis. And for him to continue to put on the show, have another big game like he did in front of Ryan Wingo, in front of Jeremiah McClellan, those are two guys from St. Louis. Now, this was Ryan Wingo's second time watching Missouri play this year. He was at the Memphis game earlier this fall, 10 minutes down the road when they played in St. Louis. And he knew that Missouri was going to have a good year, likes their OC, loves Coach Peeler, the receivers coach. He talked about his track record of developing DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown at Ole Miss, talked about Kirby Moore and that offense. Certainly Coach Drinkwitz is involved. And that's another program. We talked about Louisville and the investment of the community right now in the Cardinals. Same with Mizzou. Now, there's a lot of backing to that program right now, and Ryan Wingo and Jeremiah McClellan are two of the most coveted targets still on the board for them. Now, with Jeremiah McClellan, he's committed to Ohio State. It's tough to flip a receiver from the Buckeyes. While there are some people in Columbia that think that they have a chance to ultimately flip Jeremiah McClellan, I'm not ready to put him on spatula watch right now. But with Ryan Wingo, my crystal ball is on Texas, but Missouri continues to make me nervous about that prediction.
All right, let's quickly turn to 2025, where two of the top three prospects visiting Georgia this past weekend. The number one player and offensive tackle David Sanders, and then the number one wide receiver in Alabama commit Ryan Williams. So what are you hearing out of that visit?
Well, Georgia already has the number one class in 2025. They have the number one class in 2024. They have the number one football team. They haven't lost a game in like 3 years. And they got a chance to win both of these recruitments. You know, talking to David Sanders' family, his mom, Samantha, she just talked about the way Georgia makes them feel like family. And David Sanders went to the win over Tennessee last year, returned in the spring, returned in the summer, now back for this game. They're starting to get a great feel for all the little game day traditions that they love in Athens. They certainly have a great relationship with Coach Searles and Coach Kirby Smart. And there were a lot of recruits on campus, but they continue to show David Sanders a lot of love. They got to spend a lot of time there. Loved the dog walk. Just called the visit truly electrifying. And this is obviously a major front runner in this recruitment alongside the likes of Clemson, Michigan, North Carolina, Tennessee, some of the other contenders for David Sanders, Alabama, but Georgia, there's been times where I thought they've led. It was another great visit. And then Ryan Williams committed to Alabama, but Georgia's a program he's been to several times. He loves the staff, so that was a big reason why he came back. And then you just talked about the development that they've had from the start of the season to now. He just really likes not only the holistic development that the program has, but he's seen it week to week as this team makes adjustments from game to game. He's paying close attention. Saw them erupt for nearly 400 yards passing against a really good Kentucky team. That was right on schedule for Georgia as they hosted Ryan Williams and David Sanders for this one.
We've got a question for you from the viewers. Tyler and a few others have been asking in the chat about four-star offensive lineman Jordan Seaton, the latest on him after his official visit to Florida this weekend.
Well, he's always been super high on Florida. He was excited to get back. He told me the highlight where being around the players and the fan base, that everybody showed him so much love. And then just the message from Coach Napier as they try and rebuild this thing, that they need him and they want him. And there's an opportunity for him to come in and make an instant impact and be a left tackle there, which is important to him. And he likes the two offensive line coach approach. And then he talked about just Coach Napier being around championship level programs at Alabama and Clemson. He knows what winning football looks like, and he realizes that it's not going to happen overnight at Florida, but spending time with franchise quarterback DJ Lagway, who's having an awesome senior year, another potential riser in the upcoming 24/7 sports recruiting rankings. But Jordan Seaton loved his experience at Florida. Will it be enough to beat out Alabama? He wants to get back to Alabama for the Tennessee game. Ohio State's going to get an official in November. You got Colorado pushing. You got Oregon pushing. Oregon's going to get an official visit. He was at Colorado earlier this fall. There's still a lot of major contenders for Jordan Seaton, but Florida's been just that for much of his process. And this was an official visit that's certainly going to keep him in the running moving forward.